This is Nucleus, the podcast covering America's top leaders in business and culture. I'm your host, Tripwire. Today on our show, Naval Ravikant pulls back the curtain on the venture capital world, sharing the insider knowledge that powerful investors have long kept out of founders' hands. Here's the thing about Silicon Valley philosophers. Most of them are just VCs with a Twitter account and a Stoicism poster. Naval Ravikant is something different, and right now, in June of 2026, his ideas are arguably more relevant than they've ever been. The AI economy has completely scrambled old assumptions about what work is worth, what skills age well, and how wealth actually gets built. And if you've spent any time in startup circles over the last decade, you've bumped into Naval's framework whether you knew it or not. That tweet storm about getting rich without getting lucky? Probably in your LinkedIn feed circa 2018. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, free to download, millions of copies distributed globally, still gets quoted in founder Slack channels like scripture. The man stepped back from running AngelList years ago, and somehow his influence has kept compounding, which, honestly, is kind of the whole point. Naval Ravikant is the co-founder of AngelList, one of the most structurally important platforms in startup history, and a man who turned his own financial betrayal into a philosophy that rewired how a generation thinks about money, leverage, and time. Today, we're breaking down how he did it, why it worked, and what you can steal from his playbook before your competitors do. To understand any of this, you have to go back to Queens, New York in the late 70s. Naval's mother immigrated from India with him and his younger brother Kamal. Limited resources, unfamiliar country, steep climb ahead. Naval found his escape in the New York Public Library. Not metaphorically. The kid literally read the whole thing, or close enough. That habit, consuming books across philosophy, science, economics, mathematics, didn't just fill time. It built the architecture of a mind that would later refuse to accept conventional wisdom at face value. He earned his way to Stuyvesant High School, one of New York's elite public specialized schools, then Dartmouth, graduating in 1995 with degrees in computer science and economics. Basically, the perfect double major for someone about to live through the internet's big bang. His first real swing was Opinions, a consumer reviews website he co-founded in 1999. Sound familiar? It should. Opinions was doing what Yelp and TripAdvisor would do years before either existed, ahead of its time. Also, unfortunately, a masterclass in how startup capitalism can chew up founders who don't know the rules. When Opinions merged and eventually went public through shopping.com, Naval and his co-founder Babak Nevi walked away with far less than they believed they'd earned, allegedly because later investors manipulated the capitalization table in their favor. Naval's account of what happened was disputed by other parties, but the experience left a mark. Getting burned in the fine print of your own company's equity structure? That's not a setback you forget. That's a wound that either breaks you or becomes your mission. Naval chose mission. In 2007, he and Nivi launched Venture Hacks, a free, brutally transparent blog that demystified term sheets, cap tables, and the inner workings of startup fundraising for founders who had no idea the game was rigged. They gave the secrets away, for free, on the internet, to everyone. Old school VCs were not thrilled. Founders were electrified. The blog built a massive audience of exactly the people who were most desperate for this information. Smart founders outside the Stanford, Harvard, PayPal network who didn't have a mentor with a Palo Alto zip code. And then in 2010, Naval and Nivi took the logical next step. If Venture Hacks was the education, AngelList was the marketplace. It launched as an email list, literally an email newsletter connecting startups with angel investors. And it grew from there into something that rewired the plumbing of early-stage venture capital. The big structural breakthrough came in 2013 with Syndicates. This is the move that mattered. Syndicates let a lead investor bring along a group of co-investors and collect carry on their returns, meaning the lead only got paid if the deal actually succeeded. Aligned incentives, lower barriers, new class of investor participating in startup deals. The Jobs Act of 2012 had loosened restrictions on general solicitation right around the same time, providing regulatory wind at their backs. Later, in 2020, rolling funds let managers raise capital on a quarterly subscription basis, further collapsing the barrier between person with good judgment about startups and official fund manager. Naval didn't build a better venture capital firm. He built the infrastructure that made the whole ecosystem more efficient, then collected value from the network. That's the difference between a product and a platform. He stepped back from the CEO role in 2018, not because things went wrong, because of a deliberate philosophical choice. Which brings us to the lessons. So what do you actually take from this guy's career into your own professional life? 3 things stand out as genuinely distinct and transferable. The first is what Naval calls specific knowledge, and this concept is deceptively simple until you sit with it. Specific knowledge is the expertise you can't get from a training program or an online course. It's what happens when your natural curiosity collides with real experience, including painful experience. Naval didn't learn about the problems in venture capital funding from a McKinsey report. He learned by getting burned in his own deal. That wound became irreplaceable knowledge, the kind nobody else had in quite that form. When he and Nivi started publishing Venture Hacks, they weren't just sharing information. They were sharing knowledge that could only have come from living through the exact problem founders were experiencing. Harvard Business Review has written extensively about this concept under different names: tacit knowledge, experiential advantage, but the core is the same. Your most defensible professional asset is the intersection of what you're genuinely obsessed with and what you've suffered through. Most people try to hide the suffering. Naval turned it into content. That content became credibility. That credibility became AngelList. The second lesson is about leverage, specifically the kind that doesn't require you to trade time for it. Naval has been explicit about this framework for years, and it's become more urgent in 2026 than it was when he first articulated it. He distinguishes between old forms of leverage, capital and labor, and new forms, code and media. Code runs while you sleep. Content reaches millions without additional effort per reader. AngelList itself is a structural expression of this principle. Instead of making better investment decisions himself by working longer hours, Naval built a platform where thousands of investors could make better decisions. He captured value from the network's activity. McKinsey's research on platform businesses consistently shows that platforms outperform traditional businesses on margin and scalability, precisely because they benefit from participants' work rather than their own. The actionable version of this for you is to ask a different question. Instead of, how do I get better at this? Ask, how do I build the system that makes everyone better at this? That shift in framing is the difference between a high-performing individual and someone building durable institutional leverage. The third lesson is about transparency as a strategic moat, and this one runs counter to almost every instinct most businesses have. Naval and Nivi gave away the secrets of the venture capital industry. They explained term sheets, liquidation preferences, anti-dilution clauses, the machinery that had historically let sophisticated investors take advantage of unsophisticated founders. In doing so, they built a trust asset that no amount of advertising could have purchased. Stanford Graduate School of Business research on marketplace trust shows that platforms which reduce information asymmetry for all participants, even at short-term cost to incumbents, consistently outperform those that maintain information barriers. AngelList's early credibility came directly from Naval and Nivi's willingness to teach people the very knowledge that made AngelList necessary. Giving away expertise freely generates more durable competitive advantage than protecting it. That's not idealism. That's a business strategy with a long-term compounding mechanism. It's also worth acknowledging what's legitimately complicated here. Naval's wealth without luck framework is powerful and genuinely useful. It's also sometimes critiqued for underweighting the structural advantages he carried: the elite public school education, the Dartmouth degree, the proximity to the first dot-com wave. The opinions dispute had competing narratives. Naval's account was his account. These tensions don't cancel the lessons, but they're worth holding alongside them. The most honest thing you can say is that Naval Ravikant built real things, developed a genuinely distinctive philosophy, and demonstrated, by living it, that ideas can compound in influence the same way capital compounds in value. Let's land this thing with what you can actually use. Naval Ravikant's career teaches 3 things worth carrying into your week. Build your professional identity around specific knowledge, the expertise that only exists because you've lived the exact problem you're trying to solve. Shift your ambition from personal performance to system design, because leverage that doesn't require your time is the only leverage that scales. And share your expertise freely and publicly, because transparency builds trust faster than any other mechanism, and trust is the currency that converts to long-term business relationships. Here's the question worth sitting with. In a 2026 economy where AI is compressing the value of generic knowledge faster than anyone predicted, the only thing that can't be automated is specific knowledge built from genuine experience. Naval figured that out by getting burned in 1999. What's the wound in your career that you've been treating as a liability? And what happens if you treat it as your actual competitive advantage? Thank you for listening to Nucleus. You can show our podcast team some love with 5 stars and a follow. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Grab news. Thomas.